Hey everybody, it's Jay Henry. In this video, I'm going to start the UI for our computer vision model using Next.js. Next.js is, I think it's a pretty great framework. It combines React for client-side stuff and Node for server-side stuff, and kind of abstracts away the separation between client and server so that you can really just focus on writing one code base that has your server side stuff and your client side stuff all kind of in one package. Um, it is fairly opinionated about how you structure things and how things are set up, but I think you'll see as we go through it that it's flexible enough to do everything I've needed it to do so far, and it's I think it's a pretty powerful framework, and it's a lot lighter on the boilerplate code than React is, just plain React. At least that's how what I've found. So far I'm a fan. But let's dive into it and get started. So I've already created a project here, and I've already hooked it up, I think, to GitHub. Let's see. Git status. Yep, I'm already on the master branch. So what I'm going to do is start creating some scripts to make setup a little bit easier. The first one I'm going to do is an init script, and the init script is going to initialize the project and download some dependencies and set up some directory structures and stuff. So let's just add that here. So let's see. Yeah, just go ahead and dive right in. So we'll do npm init y npm install, and so we're going to add the dependencies that we're going to use. React DOM, obviously since it's based on React. Next, because it's based on Next. Sharp, this is an image library that we're going to use to step down images so that we can process them faster. It's got a pretty slick, fluent API that I like a lot. Form data, we're going to use this for server-side form processing, and then node fetch, which is the server-side, flavor of fetch. And then now this is where the opinions of Next come into place. So we're going to need to create a couple of directories here. Pages and Pages API. So Pages, this is going to contain our components that are actually going to be the pages that we want to render. And one of the nice things about setting them up this way is like everything you put in Pages, it's going to automatically create a route for you, so you don't have to wire that up manually, which I like a lot. The API directory, it actually has to be underneath the pages directory, or it won't work correctly. And the API directory is where we're going to actually put our server side like services that we're going to call from the pages. And I think it's fine. I would personally like a little bit more flexibility about where I stick that, but I think it's fine. And then we're going to create a config file for environment variables. Stuff where we can put like the URL to our prediction service, and I've started up an Elasticsearch cluster in AWS to store some of the stateful data for this project, and I might do a quick video on that at some point, but it's already up and running, so we're going to store the endpoint location there as well. I think we'll probably need to add the executable permission to this. Init sh, good. And then we can actually just run that, I think. I don't think it'll give us any error. Yeah, and that'll initialize our project, give us a package.json, download our dependencies, put them in there, and create the directory structure that we need. And as soon as that's done, I'll actually get started making the first page. It'll take just a second to download all this stuff, so I think I'll pause while it's downloading everything, and as soon as it's done, we'll get started. Okay, that's all done. We've got our directory structure here. We've got our package.json here. And I think we're ready to get started. So what I'm going to do is create an index page. This will be the default page that loads if nothing else is specified. And I'm going to export a function here, and this will be the main body of our page. You'll see it looks very similar to React. And we're going to return, we'll create the HTML that we're going to see here. So, you know, just like React, we're going to have our markup and our, actually I'm not going to do that yet, our markup and our styling in the same file. And so we're going to need to have a main div that contains everything. We're going to need to have a div for our markup, and then we're going to need to have a specialized container here, which is a style container. And it's got kind of an interesting syntax to it. You'll notice we're using, you know, kind of string literals there. I think that will, let's see, style JSX, yeah, that should work. Oh, we're missing a closing brace. If you leave this out, it will not work. And so we won't put any styles in there just yet, but that's where we will put them when we're ready for them. And what this page is going to be is a place where we can upload images and call our prediction service with those images and get back a prediction for them. So it should be pretty cool. And I'll just add, you know, like an H1 here, and, you know, give us something to look at. We'll do H2. We'll say, please select an image and give us some instructions there. And then we're going to actually give it some input controls. So one input is going to be a file input, and we'll give it a name, image data, and an ID. And then we'll give it an onChange function, and the onChange function is going to be what we use to save this file so that we can use it in JavaScript to call one of our APIs, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. And then we're going to add a button that'll actually execute the way that we're going to get the prediction. We'll just say get prediction, and I think that will be just fine. So now we're going to come up here, and we're going to actually create a couple of functions here. And so the first thing I want to do is create a member variable for our file, and right now I'll just set it to null. But we're going to give ourselves a function to set that file. And so when somebody selects a file, the file input will fire off an event. That event will contain a target, the current target, and then it'll contain an array of files, and it'll only have one, so we're only interested in the first one. And that's all we need to do for our set file. So now we can create the get prediction function. And this is going to be async because we're actually going to be calling an API to do this work and then return us a result. And so we're going to want to do that asynchronously. And so what's going to go on in here, I think I probably need form data at this point. So we're going to form data require form data. And form data is a built-in JavaScript kind of object which will allow us to build up in memory, in essence, an HTML form and then send it off to our API. So I'm going to create the form, and it'll just be a new form data. Actually, let's give ourselves some room to work here. and then form dot, and we're going to add file. And we're just going to call it file, and it will be our file. And then if file, so if it's not null, if it actually exists, now we're going to set up an API call to an API that we're going to write in Next, and then we'll get the results back and do something with them. So the API URL is going to be a relative URL, and we're going to call it prediction, and I'll show you. Actually, we can just do that now. So under API, we're going to create a file called prediction.js, and this is where I was saying, like, the Next is opinionated. So if you name it this, then it's going to go look in this file, and that's what's going to execute. And then we're going to say our result is await, and we're going to use the fetch API, built-in fetch API, the URL, and then we're going to give it some parameters. And we're going to tell it that the method is a host method. I'm going to give it a header, a set of headers, but really only one. We're going to say that the content type is going to be the same as the type of file, so we don't have to actually know ahead of time. Just whatever the type of file is, that's what we'll use. And the body of the request will be the file. And then that is actually enough to call our API and get a result. Although I will, there's one kind of little nuance here, which is we're going to be calling this service and sending it an image, and it's going to do some processing on that image. And what it's going to return back to us is an image key. And the image key is what we're going to kind of pass around through the app so that we can go and get information about this file, because all the information about it, including the prediction, is actually going to be stored in Elasticsearch. So let's say image key is equal to, and so even though we have awaited this fetch, we actually have to await a method called JSON on the result. And that will actually get the JSON that's returned by the service. And then I think for now we'll just log out, just console.info the image key to make sure that we got one. And that is going to be all that there is for that page. Now obviously we need to implement this, and that is going to be a little bit more involved. And so I kind of think maybe we'll just test this page and make sure it starts up, and then in the next video we'll write the first API. And so in order to start this up, what we're going to need to do is go into our package, and we've got some scripts here. We're going to actually modify this, and we're going to give it a couple of scripts to run here. Dev will just be very simply run next, and then we'll give it a couple more that we're going to use later on, but they're handy to have set up from the get-go. And that's next build, and then for start, we'll give it next start. And I think that should be enough. So if we come down here and we say npm, what is it, npm run dev. So it should start up a local server for us here. It's going to be on port 3000. And I think if we start up a web browser, and let's pull this over here. Hang on just a second. Let's pull this browser over. And if I say 0.0.0.0.3, it should show me my page, and it's very ugly right now. Maybe let's do a little bit of CSS here just to kind of clean it up a little. Actually, I'll do that in the next video, because we're actually going to create a template page that will be used by all pages, and that can be a little involved. But you can see we've got a file input here that works. And if we were to hit get prediction, it would try to call our function and it would fail. But that's the basics of getting started. So I think in the next video what we'll do is we'll actually fill out prediction, and then we'll create a global styling template to make this a little bit prettier. So until next time, if any of this was informative, or you liked it, please like and subscribe below. If you have any questions, if I did anything wrong, please mention it in the comments. Otherwise, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.